So on previous videos we set up the EnvirON hub to send a number of codes to the TV. To demo how the hub works and to demo generally how the rest of the range works, the natural place to go is one of our input devices. So we're going to move straight onto our scanning remote, and this is what it looks like. The first thing to note about the scanning remote is that it has a power point at the top here. A power point which the plug will obviously come with the device, but also charges an internal battery, so it is a wireless device as well itself. It works whilst it's plugged in or wireless if charged up. It has 8 programmable touch sockets, touch sensitive buttons, sorry. So it has 8 programmable touch sensitive buttons. They can be paired with numerous receivers, so they can be paired with the hub. They can also be paired with the iClick, for example. They can also be paired with the EnvirON Connect for a door or a window system. So all of these are essentially input devices for anything that can send signals to the next part, be that infrared or wireless. And that's going to come into play when we set this up and I show you how to do that, because there are a number of functions that each of these buttons can be set up to, and depending on how you've connected that, how you've paired those buttons, those functions will have different outputs. So remember that when we get to it. It also doesn't need to be in line with any infrared line of sight. So like a normal remote would do, where you'd have to, as we said in previous videos, you have to point it towards the TV. This doesn't, because essentially it pairs wirelessly to the hub. The hub needs to be in line of sight, as we previously explained, but this can be, as long as it's wirelessly paired and in the range of the hub, this can be pointed in any different direction. It also has a scanning mode, so it's called a scanning remote for that reason. It has 2 inputs at the top here. So those 2 inputs are 3.5mm jacks for wired switches, and those switches can scan across the different buttons and access it in all the different scanning modes you're aware of using. So single switch scanning, where it auto scans and then you press when you're through to the button that you'd like. You can also set up a dwell scan, so you know, you can press the switch to move between the different buttons, and then after a certain period of time it'll automatically press the button. And you can have 2 switch scanning, so obviously one can scan across the different buttons and one can action that button. All of these features within the learn mode are adaptable for times and speeds as well, so that's worth noting before we go in and show you how that looks. The final thing before we get going is that it is freestanding, as you can see, or mountable, just like the hub. So you can have a holder for this where you can put it to one side and charge it up, again out of reach of anybody that needs it. And the final thing is that it can work simultaneously with other input devices. So I know I've said this in previous videos, but you could potentially have the buttons that are functioning here duplicated across other input devices such as the switches or the EnvirON app. They could all have the same services and other people can use them in different ways at the same time. They aren't, once you've set up one button, it doesn't mean that nothing else can use that function or use that code. So that's the introduction to the device. Now I'm going to get it going, and it is really simple to do that. Essentially, when you get it going, you need to think of these buttons, as we've described, as individual receivers, individual controllers that you would need to pair to either device. So in this instance we're going to pair it to the hub, and in another later video I'm going to pair it to the iClick and show you how that can do it as well. But for ease of showing, we've already set up our hub. It's now pointing towards the TV if I just shift it into sight there. So it's as simple as pairing one of the buttons to one of the functions. So how do we do that? On the screen there you've got an LED display, and that says number 1 at the start. It also shows the LED across the side here. If I press the left hand button, it moves across the different buttons as you go along. So that's essentially selecting which one you are determining what you want to do. So if we stay on that top one, we notice the number 1 there. If we press the pair or learn button, it changes to a different number. Now that can coincide with a code on the hub, or it can coincide with an action if you're wirelessly connecting it to an iClick, and we'll go through that in a later video. So essentially, as I scale through this, you've got all the different codes, if we're thinking of hub, all the way up to 24. If we leave that on 1 and we let it sort of disappear as such, the next thing we need to do is pair it to the hub. So when you're pairing a device, you press the hub pairing first, and you get a light flashing on the hub to say we want to pair. You can see that flashing there. When you're in that situation, it is as simple as pressing the pair button here at the top, holding it down, and then pressing the button you'd like to pair. So in this instance, we go like that. You hear a noise. It says P at the top, and you see the left-hand light go green, bold, and you simply wait for it to disappear. That then is paired. That button is now paired to the hub. I can change the different functions I would like it to do by, on the number one, when it's on the number one like that, on the top button, just changing this now to whatever function I want. So I could have the top button there as on off. So we'll do that first and show you how that works. But now we don't want the sound because you can't hear me. So let's change that one button at the top to function 4, which if you remember rightly we set up on the hub as mute. Let that sort of disappear so it's all set in place. We're still paired with the hub, and we just changed what we want it to process as mute. And there we go. Muting, unmuting as we go. That's it, muted. So you can set it up as we go to whichever function you want. And that's a simple method of setting it up with the hub. So now we're going to show you how you can set up different parts of the scanning remote to do different things in a separate video with the iClick and with scanning as well.